Okay, so we are now getting into unit number 4. We're getting towards the end of what we're going to be doing with the textbook and with the source book, and getting to the point where you're going to be strictly focusing on your research papers, which is fabulous. That's something I'm excited about. I'm excited to work with all of you on these and to get going. That being said, we also still have to read our textbooks and our source books and take our quizzes and post in the forums. And I'm a little concerned about this because many of you are kind of slacking off on this, doing things very last minute, rushing through the quizzes. Um, and some of you do okay working that way, and that's fine. But some of you don't. And this does concern me because you do have 2 weeks for each of these units, and I try and send a number of reminders so it won't catch you off guard, so you'll be prepared. But that doesn't always seem to matter, I guess. So please work your hardest, do your best through these next few units. We get into some really turbulent times now, and some very controversial times in the history of the Hispanic world. So hopefully this will be interesting to you and will keep you going through this part. I know that midterm can be a very rough time of the semester, um, so hopefully these will be things that will push you through the rougher times. So we're dealing now in this unit with chapters 7 and 8 of both Latin America and Interpretive History and Consider the Source. Please remember you need to do both. And in sometimes in the quizzes, sometimes in the forums, there are questions that pertain to both of your required texts. So make sure you do that. For this unit, you also have a film that you're going to be watching. So that's a new thing in this unit, and you will have one in the subsequent unit as well. So chapter 7 is about the Mexican Revolution. The Mexican Revolution is so important to the Hispanic world that it warrants a full chapter of its own. It's not only important to the Hispanic world, but it's important in the scope of world history, because the Mexican Revolution was really the first true revolution of modern times. And so I want you to be thinking about that as you're reading this chapter and as you're going through the materials, through the PowerPoint and through the source materials, about how was this a revolution? What was revolutionary about it? What is a revolution? How can we define that? What do we need to have take place for a revolution to occur? Because these are important issues to ponder. Not every war can be considered a revolution. And sometimes things don't have to be successful to have been a revolution. You can have an unsuccessful revolution or an incomplete revolution, but it was a revolution nonetheless because of the nature of the people fighting, of the ideas, of what the goals that they were seeking, and what the revolutionary forces brought together. Okay, so that's the first chapter that you're reading. And along with that, I would suggest watching the film Como Agua para Chocolate, or Like Water for Chocolate, along with the chapter on the Mexican Revolution, because it deals with a lot of different parts of Hispanic culture. It deals with issues of class and issues of gender. You'll see differences of rural society and urban society. So it deals with a lot of those things, but it also brings the revolution to certain parts of the Mexican countryside, and you'll get to see that. Now, a little disclaimer about the film, and I have this in the module as well. There are some scenes of nudity in the film, brief nudity. There are some very brief sexual scenes in the film, and I hope that even if these bother you, you will simply fast forward through them or view them through a cultural lens, through a cultural perspective. We tend to have very specific ideas about what should be allowed in that way in films in our society. Yet we think nothing really of violence in our films, whereas most of the world is the other way around. They see the human body as something very beautiful, and they see it as a part of their culture, whereas they are appalled by the violence in US films. So try and keep that in mind and try and push through that. But if you really have an issue, contact me and we can try and talk about ways we can deal with this. Okay, so the next chapter. The next chapter we are dealing with from World Wars to Cold War. So we're going to see how the World Wars impacted Latin America, how Latin America was involved in the World Wars, or what was going on during the World Wars in those countries. And when we're thinking about the World Wars, we also have to think about the Great Depression, because the Great Depression fell between the World Wars, and the Great Depression had a worldwide impact. And Latin America was most certainly very strongly impacted by the Depression and would have some really difficult results. The Great Depression resulting in many countries in the institution of very staunch dictatorships, of closing off even more of the classes, where the elite classes worked to hoard what they had and keep more away from the lower classes, supporting dictators who would allow them to do that. And then there was kind of a shift in ideology with World War II, as democracies of the world were fighting fascists. So there's a change in ideology in Latin America during this time period as well. Kind of the culmination of this, going from World Wars to Cold War, comes in Guatemala. So there's a section of this chapter that deals with Guatemala, and my PowerPoint that supports this chapter also deals with this situation in Guatemala. This time period from 1944, the end of World War II, to 1954, and around 1950 to 55 was really considered the onset of the Cold War. So this time period in Guatemala is still to this day referred to as the years of spring, because it was really the first true time in Guatemalan history that they had a real democracy that was working for the people. And then that democracy was crushed. It was crushed by a coup, and a coup that was unfortunately supported by the United States government and the CIA in particular. And that would be a change in the course of relationship between the United States and Latin America. Because we would go from being more overtly involved in this situation in the region to much more covert involvement, and some very difficult situations and ideologies that would come about in the subsequent time period. So make sure you read these with an open mind. Realize we're trying to look at this from the perspective of the Hispanic world. Okay? So try and keep that in mind as you're doing your readings, as you're taking your quizzes, and writing your forum posts. Finally, I have come to realize that many of you are not watching these introductory videos. And I think personally they're important. They can help you kind of get an initial view of what we're going to be dealing with, of what type of things to be looking for in each of the chapters, and how to kind of wrap your mind around what's going on in this time period. So, as an added benefit for those of you who are watching the introductory videos and have watched this one all the way to the end, there is a extra credit question on one of the quizzes. So all you need to do to get that extra credit, it'll be worth 2 points on your quiz. All you need to do to get that extra credit is to write in the response to the question, Viva la Revolución. Viva, V-I-V-A, la Revolution. Okay? Long live the revolution. So then I know who's actually doing this and who's actually watching the videos. If you have any questions, you know where and how to find me, and I look forward. This is a fun unit, especially with the film, and we have some great discussions usually in the forum about the film, so I look forward to seeing what you all think. Have a good day.